So in this video, we're going to take a look at whether you can yet use Loop as your workflow to move tasks from one person to another in a workflow that you've already predefined. So this one came from a comment on a previous Loop video saying, can we use Loop for a workflow that also sends out a signal to the next colleague in the workflow? So we're going to have a look through some options, whether we can use Loop directly, Loop lists, whether we can use Planner in Loop, whether we can use some Power Automate to help Loop do that, or whether nothing's really there yet, and we'll have a look at some workarounds you could use, or maybe some other options that could get you to what you want to do. If you're new to the channel, I'm Gavin Jones from MeTime. We help organizations be more efficient, help make their employees' lives easier, all happening to use Microsoft 365 more fully, more readily. And if you want to know more, check out some of the links in the description below. We've got free training, or you can go straight to book a call where you can see if you are a good fit for our Microsoft 365 Accelerator program, if you're a small company or a small part of a larger organization, or if you want some one-to-one consulting, then we offer that as well. Book a call using the link in the description below. But on to this question. So can we use Loop for a workflow that also sends out a signal to the next colleague in the workflow? So if I jump into Loop now, I've just set up a new workspace called Loop Workflow. I've created a template page, which was product wiki. So let's just recreate what I did. So we used a template. I was just looking through some of these. I'm not sure if anyone uses any of these and they find them useful, let me know in the comment below. I'm not sure I've ever used these in a live sort of environment with a client. But say we use product wiki, which looked like it had a table in it for us, this wiki pages table, and maybe we want to put a workflow on that to say, well, if the category changes to something, let's notify the next person. If the status changes, let's notify someone. That looked like maybe that's something a bit like what we wanted to do. So we click use template and we don't get any of the things filled in, which is, I guess, as we would expect from a template. And say we just want to add some stuff in there. I'll delete this page so we don't get confused with the other one. And so I don't know, maybe the process is, let's design a new product and the status is in progress. We've got some categories, but maybe these are the stages. So let's change option 1 to design. Let's change option 2 to production, and let's change option 3 to shipping. Something very simple process. So design a new product is in design. Maybe the next task is, I don't know, procure parts. That one's not started yet, and that's in production, say, something like that. Maybe I'm the owner of both of these, and you can see, like, in a person column, I can just add myself or anyone else in the organization by just clicking and selecting the person, or by typing their name and put it in. And we can put due dates and things in as well. But say we wanted to say, well, when this, and it's a bit tricky in a list to know how someone would set up their workflow, but say we wanted to say, well, when this thing moves into production, so maybe it was, I don't know, product X, maybe it was a bit bigger, and we've got some other fields to manage the actual tasks. So say this isn't started yet and it's actually in design at the moment and I'm still the owner. Well, let's say when it goes from design to production, we need to let the next person know in the chain. And you think, well, we might be able to do rules, but rules 1 are in preview. So someone that's in our Microsoft 365 Accelerator program have gone quite deep into Loop and rules and got so far, and then, to be frank, they broke. Like, he couldn't add a new rule. There was no documentation about the limit of rules you can add. He couldn't then, once it had broken, couldn't delete any rules if that was the issue, to like free up some rules to to add another one, that didn't help, and it was still broken. And basically all the things he built in rules then just didn't work. And so I always advise, if it says it's in preview, it's for a reason. It's not actually finished yet, and so it's pretty difficult to recommend this even if it did work, because it's in preview. But at some point, obviously, it will come out of preview and hopefully be a bit more robust. But is this going to help us? So we might say, well, when the category, and we want to say becomes, but it won't let us, so we have to say equals, and maybe when it goes to production, then we want to automate, but all we've got is either notify and loop, send a message to someone, or send an email. So say we want to keep things in loop, we'll do notify and loop, but we can't then pick, you need to hard code it. We can't pick from a list of people that to do with production and keep that up to date. We've just got to say the person we want to notify. I'm the only person in my organization, so that I can only pick myself, but you could pick anyone else in your organization. But you say we can't actually change anything in the table. It only notifies, and it is a bit glitchy, so I'm sure I didn't click off then, but maybe you can watch it back and show me that I did. But I didn't mean to click off there, and it lost our rule then. So say we want it to go to production, notify and loop, and we'll notify me when something moves from design to production. We confirm, but then there's no way to change the owner. So even if it wasn't me, we were notifying someone else in the chain, we couldn't then get the owner changed automatically when that went from to design to production. If we click off, that will notify me somewhere in notifications. Hopefully it'll pop up at some point. But we can't get that owner changed in that loop rules in a table. So our notification has now popped up. It says you edited a table, it went from design production, and we've got a rule to let me know when that happens. So that might be useful if you're a manager and you want to know which things have moved on. But if in that original question, to notify the next person in the workflow that something's happened, you'd have to hard code every single place and then have a business process to come and change the owner anyway. And so you could just then have a business process to say, well, let's just, when it moves to production, change the owner to the next person. And that might be enough that you can manage your workflow that way. So that's in a list in loop. There are a task list in loop which uses planner for it to work. So if we had a task list, very similar to using this list, we could have product X. We have buckets in our task list, just like we do in planner, and so we could add the buckets to be our categories. So design, production, and add another one for shipping. And so we can then still assign someone and select a due date. The benefit of it being in a task list rather than just a list is that because it's using planner to back that feature, it all goes back into planner and into Microsoft to do. So if you've not seen anything about planner or to do, then check out some of our other videos on that and how that all integrates, or how it's starting to get more integrated. But at least that will then appear in your assigned to me tasks in planner if you're already using planner. Downside is, if you are already using planner, this task list just creates a brand new plan. So it doesn't go back into anything you might already be using in Microsoft Teams to do with your project, unless you're fully into loop. And every single task list sets up a new planner plan, which can get quite confusing. So it will still appear in your assigned to me list, but if you want to go back and see all of the tasks to do with that project, and say you had a task component on multiple pages, they don't all feed back through into the same plan. It's just all completely independent. So we also have the same problem that we can't, we've only got the same rules in our task list as we did in the list. So if we say, well, when the bucket becomes, again, we can't, I don't know why become, I've never been able to select something when it says becomes, equals production, then we've only got the same things to automate. We can't like change the assignee to the next person in the list using tasks. And therefore, because task is using the same thing as planner, we could insert a planner plan and see it like planner. We'll just pick one we've already done. So let's do this one that I used in a different example. And so say we had the same buckets as with what we've just done without me changing them. We can't say when someone drags product X and say this is, I will change them just so it's easy to see. Production, I've just put design and production. Imagine that's shipping. Say we move product X into production, there's no way to say, well, let's have, we can't even put rules in when we've got planner added in, to say we'll move that onto a different assignee. But we could just do that with the business process and say, well, when it's in, when you move it, the person that's assigned to it in design, when you move it over to production, just take your assignee off and then go and add it on to the next person. You could just tell people that that's how you want to work. That avoids, though, the satisfying ping when you complete a task. So well, ideally we'd want to say, well, when it's in design and I complete it, it would either move or create another task for production to go and do their bit and assign that to somebody. And there's no way in Loop to do that directly. So you think, well, maybe we'll jump out into Power Automate to see if we can do that. And in Power Automate, well, when we look for Microsoft Loop, the only thing that the trigger we've got at the moment is triggers when a rule in Loop gets triggered. So we'd have to do a rule already with a notification to somebody. So we could put a dummy account in there, so the dummy account gets notified, and then fire something else off in Loop. But I'm not sure, let's have a look, we'll do it live together, whether you can do anything useful after that's been triggered. Finding it difficult to even find any dynamic content right now to use. But say we had got the trigger to work, what actions can we do in Loop? Well, if we search for Loop, we can either get the message content or deregister the webhook. Those are the only two things we've got in to do with actions in Power Automate. So I don't think that's gonna help us like put stuff back into the Loop list or the task list. So maybe we don't use a Loop list and we go down the route of saying we'll use a planner in Loop and get Power Automate to help. Well, our triggers for planner, unfortunately at the moment, at the time of recording this video, aren't anything to do with when a task is moved to another stage. So we can't say when you drag it into the next stage. So we can either do when a task is assigned to me, when a task is completed, or when a new task is created. So we could do when a task is completed, but then I don't think we've got any option to say, well, when it's completed in a certain bucket. So let's pick our one that we just had, which was case 1, 2, 3. How often do you want to check for items? So this is going to impact whether you can do it for free or for, have hit some limits and have to pay for the automation through Microsoft. But the interval's a minute as it stands right now. And then if we look for what actions we can do in Planner to see if this is going to help us see more Planner actions, we can then, once a task's completed, we could create a task. And this is always confusing to me. Sometimes they have different versions of an action. So create a task, this one's in preview, and create a task, this one isn't in preview. So presumably that one's newer than this one and might do some other things or work slightly differently. But, if you're not a coder or in it all the time, you don't really know that or have to spend a lot of time finding out. So we could, list buckets, lists. These are all useful for certain things, but we can like remove assignees from task, but like our trigger is when a task completed. So we don't really want to remove the assignee from a completed task. That doesn't make sense. We could update a task. Or we could update a task version 2, which is in preview. Update task details. So maybe we could create a brand new task and put that in a bucket and assign that to somebody. Again, we could then pick a list maybe with some logic, because it starts to get quite complicated quite quickly. And it's like, well, how much time are you actually saving from doing this automation, given the time that you've got to spend like making it all work and thinking about it and think about all logic. And then if someone leaves or the process changes, you've got to change it anyway. If you've hard coded all the people, you've got to go back into the flow, or someone's got to go back into this. And if they're not used to it, obviously it looks a bit daunting. And so, yeah, I always think like automation should only be used just to save time. Or you should get the business process working as it, even if the automation breaks, because at some point I always tell people automations will definitely break. It might be very infrequent. It might be one time every 10 years. It might be one time when you're asleep, it breaks, but at some point it will break, either because of the logic you've put in, maybe Microsoft server's down, maybe the trigger just doesn't fire and you don't know why, and it's worked before and it doesn't work now. You need a process to like keep your business going anyway. So I'm not a massive fan of trying to go down this sort of planner route. If you're spending ages reassigning tasks to people, then maybe, but I can't imagine a scenario where you just having a business process of saying, look, either when you've completed product X, whatever the task it is, here, and click complete, your business processes will go and add a task for production and go and assign it to someone else. Or you say, well, we'll use this as a card, and maybe you've got some things as checklist items, so like Gav, design, Paul, produce, Hannah, ship, something like that. Obviously you can't assign those individual checklist items, but you could have a business process to do it. So this is assigned to me because it's in design and I'm the designer. I say, yeah, I've done my bit. I drag it over and I reassign that to Paul. Obviously there's no Paul in our organization, so I can't assign it, but I'd reassign it and then it would go on to the next person. I can't believe that automation would be worth building just to assign it over to somebody else. So there's workarounds. I'd always recommend using Planner at the moment rather than a loop list, just because Planner's been around a bit longer and therefore is a bit more robust. But Planner in itself, if it's a key critical business process, probably isn't the right thing to use anyway, just because someone could just like move their mouse over and do that, or just click something by accident. It's like, I didn't know where that gone. Even if you got the Planner as a loop component, it doesn't even pop up the undo button. So it's like, I didn't know what I did. How do I get it back? Maybe there's, the plan might be completely full, so it's a bit harder to see than what we've just done right now. And so the version control, version history, being able to get items back isn't great. Planner Premium can do a bit more of that, but it's basically just project on the web rebadged. And so if you don't need to have that, if it's already part of your license, then great. It's pretty difficult to recommend as an additional license right now, unless you need all of the Gantt charts and dependencies and stuff like that, and not enough, don't need it enough that you would need Project, the full desktop app. And the licensing is a bit complicated as well, so people just tend to jump out into third-party apps, in my experience with SMBs. And so if you needed something more robust and you wanted better automations through Power Automate, then the obvious thing to use isn't Loop, it is to use Microsoft Lists. But at the time of recording, you can't put a Microsoft list in a rich way into a Loop page. You'd have to create a Microsoft list in Microsoft Lists, and then if you wanted to go and reference it in your Loop here, so let's do this travel requests one, the only thing we can do is we can copy the link and paste it in our loop page, but we just get like the same as a SharePoint page. Doesn't even really give us a preview. And if we click it, we jump out into the list, which might be enough for you. But Microsoft Lists is been around a lot longer, so it's way more robust. It's got row level version controls. You can see the version history for any row. And you could have multiple stages across the list with multiple requesters, which person it is. You could have other lists for the automation to go and look at and see which people should we go and pick for this next task. We could have different states. You can build that entire thing yourself, whatever you want it to do. You can make it as complicated as you want, as simple as you want. And Power Automate is a lot more robust with lists because of that row level version control. Each row is its own sort of unique identifier, and you can go and pull back and update rows and have multiple automations running on that list at the same time. So it's a lot more robust. I've used it before in the past, and the only thing is it doesn't yet just appear in loops. If you're dead set on using loop and the process is quite easy, I'd recommend just putting a planner in there, so at least all your things are kept together in planner. And if you really need to build something like a workflow going across, I recommend using Microsoft Lift. And if you want to know more about Microsoft Lift, then check out this video next. Click the thumbs up if this video was at all useful for you. Really helps us in the algorithm. Click the subscribe button before you go. We've got new videos coming out every week. And thanks for watching so far. We'll see you in the next one.